I don't know, man. I think we're getting to the point where they're losing the ability to control the systems the way we think they would. New Hampshire, for instance, the Free State Project. Mm-hmm. I mean, these guys are getting more and more people on board with seceding from the Union. Now, will that happen? I think it's highly unlikely. But what happens when you have the Free State Project saying, everybody come to New Hampshire, sign a pledge saying, we out? What happens when 80% of New Hampshire is like, yo, we out? And then what happens if there's like mass non-compliance with the federal government's laws? Right. The feds don't have enough people to go in and deal with, like, I think New Hampshire only has like 800,000 people in it.
Not many, yeah.
Yeah, do you want to check the population? But I mean, how is the federal government going to deal with 800? Block the highways or something? Right. Like, what do you do? And it's not just New Hampshire; it's other. I mean, Texas. Mm-hmm. Texas has constantly pushed those buttons. I don't know. I mean, what do you think? You think Texas would ever get to that point?
Yeah, I do actually. I think it'll be sooner than a lot of people think. And you're right. It's, to me, what they, like, just hypothetically speaking. Yeah, if 2/3 of Texans voted in a referendum that we want to break away, it would be difficult as the U.S. lectures the world about self-determination. You know, what if they just start reading them the Declaration of Independence to them? And so what part of this do you not agree with anymore? You know, and it would be important too to not have any, you know, no violence suggested, just to say, no, we're breaking away, so that if Washington starts ordering the Air Force to bomb them, it's going to be pretty clear cut what happened.
Right. So this is the thing, you know, people often say, oh, the feds would never allow secession because they would send the military in. And I'm like, that would make people more like supportive of secession. Right. They would see the aggressor being the federal government going in and rounding people up. They'd see crying babies and screaming women and be like, this is crazy. Like, they didn't even do anything. And I think more and more people would actually it's not too similar from the American Civil War with Fort Sumter. When the fighting broke out, I think it was 7 other states that were like, whoa, that's crazy, we're out. And then word traveled way slower. In the era of 4th and 5th generational warfare, you got to have propaganda on your side, which means often, you know, you want to be the victim.
Right.
You want to be the one getting hit going, oh, they're attacking me, help me. And then people sympathize with you. So that's why I'm wondering, like, what would happen if New Hampshire said, we hereby secede, it's done. And the federal government says, no, you don't. And they say, don't care, not listening. Are they going to send in the feds, start collecting taxes, or what?
Right. So I have been doing research on, like, nonviolent resistance, you know, thing like the civil rights struggle. And just to give an example of people, they had training back in the 60s where, like, when they would do a sit-in, and they would train the people and say, okay, the mobs are going to come and start punching and screaming and spitting at you. Don't swear at them and just sit there and take it. And then when you have taken too much, we rotate. So the guys on the inside are the circumference now, and they take it. You know what I mean? And that was, so it wasn't just, oh, let's love everyone. No, it was strategic because they knew we're outnumbered. You know, we have to win public opinion. And then enough people watching TV are like, you know, seeing firemen, you know, hose down marchers, and, you know, like, I don't know if I'm for that. So you're right with New Hampshire again. So, and that's why right now, again, they're making this propaganda effort to talk about how the right wing threat and all these, you know what I mean? Because they want the public to believe when they're kicking indoors.
Yep.
It's because there's all these right wing kooks who pose a threat, not just people who say, you know what, I want to break away and not be affiliated with Washington, D.C. anymore.
Got a number here. It's 1.36 million people in as of 2019, 1.36 million in New Hampshire.
More than I thought, yeah.
You know, I think saying we want to break away is like saying I'm anti that, I hate that, I'm voting against that. Rather than being against it, you want to say we're fixing this American system, and then all these people around the country will start doing it together, and that is not going to be considered anti. If you say I'm breaking away, they're going to say that's anti-American, and people would be brainwashed, 5th generational. But if you say we're fixing this together, that's gonna tweak their minds and make them join you.
When you make a good point. All of this rhetoric about the far right and everything is getting people ready for when they start kicking the doors down. Right. They're going to be like, oh, you know. But New Hampshire, that's going to be a cold splash of water in the face to a lot of people who are like, wait, an entire state is trying to secede? Wait a minute. And I'll tell you this. They're not hearing this when they turn on CNN. So right now, I assure you, most people, like, I'd be willing to bet. And I would say this. If I was looking at 2 options of voting, you know, does the leftist YouTuber sphere, BreadTube, know about New Hampshire secession, or don't they? I bet they don't. I would say I will put my chip on they don't know about this, and they're not paying attention to it, and it doesn't matter to them, even though they're supposedly libertarian. Now, I think it's fair to say many of them probably do, but I think it's not part of the conversations they're having. In which case, even to those people who are supposedly like more, politically oriented and regular people, none of them are probably seeing the stories in the news about how I think it's like up to 5 reps.
I think so. Yeah.
5 or so.
5 was the last time I heard.
In New Hampshire, who are like, we favor secession. That's
Mm-hmm.
a tiny amount relative to the hundreds or so that they have.
It's growing.
But that's a conversation you think, like, if you would think that the state of Jefferson, that several counties in Oregon voted to secede from the state to join Idaho
Right.
and then Northern California, that there's a county in Northern Colorado that wants to join Wyoming.
Yeah, well,
that,
funny.
Right, and that, even California's talked about secession, Texas has talked about secession, New Hampshire is filing the paperwork, Texas filed the paperwork before, and there was a poll, I think it was YouGov data we mention often, 37.2% of Americans favor their region breaking off from the U.S. to form a new regional government. I'd be willing to bet most people don't know about that, and even political leftists don't know about that. If one of these states did make an actual formal declaration, it would be like them waking up one day with like the moon being upside down or something weird. Like, how are we at this point? If the government then came and said it's far-right extremists, they'd be like, all 1 million, 1.3 million? Well, it passed by 60%. So you're saying like 700,000 people, 800,000 people are all far-right extremists? Or is that a whole state saying, yo, we out?
Right. And to Ian's point, I think you're right. So with my, when I talk about this, so we're using the term secession just because it's very precise, and we all know, I'm sure your audience is very informed, but I would call it like the Texas independence movement. It's the same thing, just like technically the 4th of July, they seceded from Great Britain, but we consider it Independence Day.
I just thought a good way to do it would be if you set up a smart contract so that your government secedes until your demands are met. The demands could be whatever you want. So like repeal the Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. If the U.S. government does that, we'll come back into the country. And then you could have a bunch of different communities secede at once with smart contracts set up ready to reunify.
You wouldn't need smart contracts. The problem is confidence. If people, you guys have seen For Vendetta, I assume, yeah? You know that scene at the end where, what's the name of the inspector?
I'm not going to come up with
Dascombe or whatever. I don't remember. He's like, eventually someone will do something stupid, and then it shows the finger man, they call him, and he shoots a little girl, and then all of a sudden everyone starts walking up to him. They have pipes, and he's like, holding his badge, but they don't care, because that is the point where people no longer have confidence in the system. In the beginning of the movie, when Natalie Portman's character says, "Oh God, your finger men," that's her saying she believes in the power of the state and she fears it. The end of the movie is when people say, "We don't believe in your power or care about it." So, in terms of breaking away, seceding, peaceful divorce, whatever, if people just don't believe in the power of an institution, it doesn't exist.
The reason I bring up smart contracts with like your states, so say New Hampshire secedes, they have a smart contract ready to bring them back into the union when their demands are met, is because if some power-hungry monarch came into power in New Hampshire during that process and decided, yeah, you'd repeal the Federal Reserve, but I'm not coming back now, you'd have some strongman. So you want to automate it out of trustless, basically.
You can't automate the process by which the public would come to trust the government again.
Yeah, it shouldn't be about trust.
Well, it doesn't matter. Listen, the point is, if you have, let's say you got 1.3 million people in New Hampshire, and they do a referendum on secession, and 60% say, okay, we're going to vote. So you're looking at, I guess, what would that be, around 60%, so maybe 600, 700,000 people, 700 or so thousand. Those people have stated with that vote, we have no confidence in the system. You can't then just have a system that automatically turns around one day and says, oh, all of you guys who voted against this, you are now back in the system. They'd say, no, we're not. We don't believe in it.
For me, it's not that I hate the United States and that system, but there are aspects of it I want changed. So as like a, I don't know what you would say, like I'm boycotting this stupid government until you fix these things. I don't want to be gone from the U.S. forever, but I'd be happy to put pressure them to fix the system.
So when you're dealing with several 100,000 individuals, you can't just one day snap your fingers and have all of them agree. If 700,000 people agree, we want out, no matter what happens, there's no point at which you can just turn around and say, okay, now you all hereby agree to like the state and believe in its power. They're going to be like, no, we still don't believe in its power.
I guess part of why I'm pushing this is because I think if they want it out, if you really wanted to get out of the United States, that's not going to happen. The U.S. federal government would demolish any kind of resistance like that. They would send in the federal. They'd block off I-95, and then they would.
Bro, I think you need to understand what
they have satellites, dude.
Yeah, I get it.
They have jet planes. Like, what do you?
The people who are going up to New Hampshire are not mom and pop, like soccer mom, local mid managers. These are people who want to live in the middle of nowhere and hunt for their food. These are free staters who are staunch libertarians and ANCAPs who are going up there being like, good, take it all away. Get away from me. I'm going to grow my own food and get water from the ground. So if the feds came in and said, we're cutting off the supply of TVs, they'd be like, we don't care. They'd find other means.
Off imports. If they
So I'm enjoying this discussion. So to your point, that's why in my writing about this stuff, I focused on Texas first because they've got the two oceans and they've got the border with Mexico. It would be harder, and it's huge too. It would be harder to seal them up. Whereas Florida also, there's many respects in which you might think, yeah, they should go too. President DeSantis or whatever. But it would be easier to just do a naval blockade. So I agree with you. It would be tricky. But again, if they did it peacefully, and their only crime was to say, we're breaking away, we're not sending money to Washington anymore, and they sent in tanks and starved them into submission, that might be a PR disaster, and there would be so much guerrilla media like showing, what I mean? Like right now, like American troops doing atrocities overseas, if they were doing it in New Hampshire, that might not play with a lot of people.
I mean, you'd probably get sanctions on the U.S. All of a sudden, massive G7 trade partners would be like, we will not be trading with you until you stop doing what you're doing.
Now, you're right. They could get away with it if they found all these right-wing, depots of munitions, and you know what I mean. Like if the government could plausibly claim either because of the false flag or because there really were people who decided, I'm sick of this.
They've got MSNBC. It would be a total PR nightmare for the New Hampshire people. It would be terrible.
So it would be and they control of the narrative.
And then New Hampshire, the people would have to appeal to another country to help them. And then it would be like, who are they going to appeal to? Canada? I don't think so. China, probably.
The funniest thing about a New Hampshire secession is it would basically sever Maine from the contiguous United States.
Yeah, it can't happen. They wouldn't let that happen.
Right, of course. But I'm curious as to what their tactic would be. Probably, I'd imagine, at this point, it would be to flood the zone with money and resources to drown out any conversation about a free state. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you, a grassroots movement is something powerful. If more and more people keep flooding up to New Hampshire for the Free State Project, no amount of money is going to shut that down.
Right. And at the very least, that's where I think it's worthwhile, shows like this, people talking about it, just because I'm curious to hear, like, the people who, work for Vox or the New York Times, just get them on record to say, hypothetically, if 2/3 of Texans voted to break away, would you let them go, or would you think they should send in airstrikes and tank? You know what I mean? Just to have them on record, because how could they say, or maybe they would say, yeah, we wouldn't let them do that. What are you talking about?
We're at a point, I'd be willing to bet, if we went to and polled Democrats, should Republican states be allowed to secede? They'd say yes. I think you will see a large portion say, yes, let them go. Now, a year ago, or there was a year or so ago, there was data from the New York Times on this, and I think it was something like 30% said, yes, they can go. Like 60 some odd percent said overwhelmingly, no, they can't leave the union. I think that's changed, a year on now, especially as things are going. I'll tell you this, come 2022, if Republicans end up taking large portions of the House and they end up getting control back, then you're going to see the sentiment flip. And leftists are going to be like, get them out.
Right.
We already saw that Podesta thing from the Boston Globe that John Podesta said the West Coast should secede from the Union if Donald Trump wins. Mm-hmm. What happens when Trump wins again? Joe Rogan, in the news, simply for stating his opinion. I love how this always happens. Joe says he thinks Trump's going to run, Trump's going to win. If that happens, the left is going to be like, how about we let you secede instead of letting Trump be president, and then what? How does that happen?
Right, and that's some of the arguments I've been making too, is to say to, like, let's call them blue state voters, just for lack of a better term, suppose it were Texas and they wanted to break away, let them go, because all the people in your state, if you're in California or some other blue state, New York, whatever, a lot of people would move to Texas then. So you get rid of them, those gun nuts, or the people who don't want to get vaccinated. Get them away from you. Let them go.
If Texas did leave the Union, Democrats would never lose a presidential election again.
Right, for the remaining, U.S. system. So it's kind of a win-win, and that's not like a paradox. Like, armies agree to not use poison gas against each other. There are things and this would avoid a lot of conflict. So to me, and I'm not just trying to like trick the left or something. I'm saying, no, can't we all agree? If Texas wants to leave, let them go. That's better for everybody.
But look, we end up seeing Sarah Silverman comes out on her show saying maybe we need a peaceful, what'd you say, a separation? I don't know if she said
divorce, I think.
Did she say peaceful divorce?
I think so.
That means she must be listening to Michael Malice. Cause
I'm more into the peaceful separation, which is why I bring up the smart contract civil disobedience angle, because you can leave and then come back. When you divorce, it's gone forever.
No, Ian, you're not understanding. Like, we're talking about if like, why do you believe U.S. dollars are valuable, right? Because you can go to the store.
I can
and
buy stuff with it, yeah.
What if one day the clerk said, I don't want your money. It's not worth anything to me.
It's useless then.
Would there be one day where you convinced him, no, the smart contract changed, therefore you have to take it now? He'd be like, get out of my store.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Let's say you have 800,000 people all say one day, we no longer want to accept U.S. dollars. We think it's valueless. And then you're like, but we'll do a smart contract that says as soon as the Fed's gone, we'll all take this back. And then one day the system comes back and the smart contract flips, and now everyone is mandated to accept dollars again. And you walk into the gas station. Do you think that clerk will just change his mind? Or do you think he's going to be like, I said I don't take that money anymore. Get out. The smart contract will not change public confidence in a system. If the confidence breaks, there's no reversing it. I mean, maybe over a few decades and a few generations, you can rebuild that network, but it doesn't work that way.
I see what you mean, that people are going to do what they're used to doing regardless of what the law says. But if you could digitally, because things are going digital now, if you could just digitally kind of just change the money, like so you're using U.S. dollars now, tomorrow you're using Texas dollars, and then when they finally repeal the Federal Reserve, you're using U.S. dollars again.
I mean, I think that sounds like a pipe dream.
I think seceding peacefully is a pipe dream, because there's no way the most powerful military that's ever existed would let a piece of their economy just walk away.
I agree. Like in Oregon, these counties want to secede, like as if Portland's going to let their serfs go. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.